So Nate, are you gonna kick it off? Or someone introducing us?
Let's hold on just a second. Lost
Yep.
my sound. Testing. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. We'll get started in just a moment, folks. Thanks for your patience.
And welcome. And happy Thursday. It's just a day before Friday.
Happy first day of spring, I think. Isn't it spring today?
Is it? That's awesome.
Spring is
Maybe.
sprung.
How long are we gonna wait for folks?
Yeah, let's go for it. I'll go ahead and kick off. Thanks everyone for joining us on this beautiful March morning. Spring has officially sprung. We're here today to talk about EPR in action. This is one of a series of webinars hosted by NAMA. And the whole purpose of this webinar is to help educate folks and to bring them up to speed on all the wonderful things that are going on, not only in California, but across the nation. I'm Nate Pelzar, Director of Administration with the California Product Stewardship Council. Heidi?
Hi, everybody. I'm Heidi Sanborn, Director of the National Stewardship Action Council and the Stewardship Action Foundation. We work nationally on EPR and circular economy, advancing the circular economy. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Okay, we'll go ahead and dive right in. And looks like Heidi, we're controlling our own presentations. I'm going to go ahead and click next. So what I'll do is a bit of background about the California Product Stewardship Council, and then I'll focus on some of our active bills, a number of EPR focused or cleanup bills of EPR type. So we're a small 501c3 based out of Sacramento, California. We like to say small but mighty because we really do pack a punch. We go up against the strongest and largest industries in the US and in some cases globally to push an agenda. And the agenda is to hold them responsible for the costs associated with problematic products at the product. So built and passed over the last 10, 15 years on any number of fronts, including pharma and textiles, and the list goes on. And I'll talk about a few of those today, and Heidi will talk about all the wonderful things that NSAC is doing, not only in California, but across the US. So I wanted to start by first sharing some information about our board of executives here at CPSC. And we've got folks representing both cities and counties and various jurisdictions across the state of California, and also representatives from private industry. Here's the so very diverse board, bringing diverse viewpoints and just a wealth of experience in the industry. Staff, again, as I said, small but mighty. We've got about 6 folks now, including Doug Kobold, who's been our fearless executive director for, gosh, fast going on 7 years. Dr. Joanne Brash, myself, Virginia, Ryan, and Liz. Put on and grown by CPSC over the years, and of course working on, in many cases, global precedent-setting legislation. Our funding comes primarily from local jurisdictions. You can see the map here. I know a lot of you on this call are
Nate, I can't see the
California.
screen, just so you know.
Okay. Yes, I am presenting a slide deck. Let me try sharing again. I wonder what happened to my screen.
There it goes.
Can you see my screen now? Great.
Yep.
Okay. So back at it. Our funding comes from associate industry, combination of the two, and also a lot of funding from grants that we apply for. And those grants help fund educational programs and programs that help local residents across the state of California switch from single-use problematic products to reusable products that are less toxic, reusable, so these are wonderful programs, not only our environment and our surroundings, but also they really help improve the lives and the well-being of local residents. So next slide. Okay, some of our sponsors always tough because they really do help us keep our doors open and doing the work we do at the the Capitol Legislature. So our mission and vision really is to shift California's material and energy policies towards a more circular economy, towards product stewardship, and in a nutshell, extended producer responsibility, where we push the responsibility for those products over to the manufacturers of those problematic products. So that's really one of the main takeaways today. Is we'll talk about product stewardship and how producer responsibility and consumer responsibility fit into that mix. So that's really the biggest takeaway. Our vision is a future where producers are responsible for developing and funding reuse, repair, and materials recovery systems for the products within a circular economy. So we're not there yet, far from it, but we're moving in that direction. And what we help the state do is we help them set performance goals. We help them oversee progress and ensure that ultimately there's transparency and accountability for all these efforts related to product stewardship and extended producer responsibility. Okay, you've probably seen some form of this over the years. The whole purpose of this is to help illustrate the difference between cradle to cradle and cradle to grave. Cradle to grave. Well, let's start with a circle. So what we've got here are manufacturers producing valuable products that then go to the retailers and then to consumers. So in a linear model, that would then go to the trash and then to the landfill. And that's the one that's really creating all the problems for us when it comes to pollution and finding enough dump space. And over the last few decades, we've seen a migration from that linear model to a circular model. So instead of consumers tossing things into the trash, they find ways to reuse or repair, or some sort of producer responsibility program that takes the product back and either, again, reuses it or upcycles it in full, or breaks it down into materials that can then be reprocessed and then put into a feedstock for new other products, and then back to the manufacturer it goes. So that in and of itself creates a circular system and cradle to cradle, as opposed to cradle to grave, with a landfill being the grave. So California has been, really a leader in the nation, and in some cases the world, when it comes to EPR programs. And that it starts really with the passage of the Better Law back in 1986. That's consumer responsibility, where the consumers pay a small fee. We call it a deposit, and then that is tacked onto the product during purchase. And then when the product is consumed, they take it back, and then they get the deposit back, right? We've got a lot of systems like that. It really was quite a trend back in the late 80s and early 90s. As the system grew and matured, and the recycling system shifted from one that was focused more on the consumers paying for the fees and taking responsibility for returning it and recycling it, to one that eventually is now quite popular, the extended producer responsibility. Manufacturers are held accountable, and they pay the bulk of the costs for recycling and gathering and transportation, and in some cases destruction. So really wanted to share this with you, so you have a better understanding of really all the product categories that California deals with. We've got about 14 now, and a lot of the legislation that led to these individual programs modified to some degree. In some
Nate,
cases,
I'm sorry to say you're cutting in and out a bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
let me scoot forward a little bit.
Okay.
So the laws have been taken from California, in some cases edited, in small, in some cases, in some instances, large ways, to pass their own laws for similar or same products. So we're really trendsetters here in California, and thankful to all the folks that came before us to get this ball rolling. Okay, so what is producer responsibility versus consumer responsibility? Again, this is really just the manufacturer taking responsibility for certain products, and the consumer responsibility category being what I just described, where the consumers really take the bulk of responsibility and are responsible for paying the fee, absorbing the fee, and then dealing with the product at the product's end of life. So there's a lot of information, a lot of detail. Again, I just wanted to show you the long history that California has, and all of the wonderful things we've done over the years to move in the right direction, and the right direction being extended producer responsibility. Okay, this is where I wanted to spend quite a bit of time out of the limited time that I have to present this morning, just because there seems to be some confusion in the industry about what exactly product stewardship is. It's an umbrella concept, and it really spans over the entire width of the graphic down below, which includes everything from producer responsibility, consumer responsibility. So in past when I've shared this graphic, the thing that really makes the light bulb go off in people's minds is who's funding this, right? Who's paying for these costs? It's super important, and it really helps dictate which end of the spectrum you fall on for each of these individual programs. So if it's 100% industry funded, then it's a pure producer responsibility program. You can see we've listed a bunch of down below, where the bulk, if not all, of the costs for the end of life products falls into the lap of the producers, the manufacturers. So that we lose batteries, thermostats, pharmaceuticals, sharps, packaging, textiles. On the opposite end of this graph, of this chart, is consumer response. Very little, if any, industry funding. And that means that the consumer ultimately is responsible for making sure this gets to where it needs to go. You absorb the costs. You oftentimes typically pay for them at the checkout. And you can see as we move between those two poles, various aspects of the program that are either producer funded or more consumer funded. So it really is a spectrum. Not a lot of products do fall on the extreme poles. We do have quite a few products that fall in the middle. Ag pesticide containers, recalled products, used oil. These are programs that you're probably with. You've probably been either paying the fees or dealing with the programs or managing the programs to some extent for any number of years. And I did want to mention that we'll have a period at the end for questions, should anybody have any. What's new at CPSC? Now they understand what producer responsibility is and consumer responsibility and product stewardship. And I just want to remind you really what really the whole purpose of this webinar is. It's to help you understand what extended producer responsibility is and how important it is to communities, to our health, to our environment, for those manufacturers of those problematic products to take responsibility and to be held accountable for management of those products at the product's end of life. So what CPSC does and has done for many, many years is push that producer responsibility orientation, the extended producer responsibility laws that hold the producers responsible, and in rare occasions do something else, such as a ban bill, right? So if a producer is putting up a really big fight and they're doing everything they can to avoid responsibility of their products, then and if a reusable version is already available, what we'll find that a ban bill might be the suitable option. Okay, so that's what we're seeing here. We're going to see a mix of bills varying from bans to EPR and to other solutions somewhere in between. But again, the best option is extended producer responsibility, where we hold the producers responsible for their products and the establishment of convenient take-back programs, again, on the manufacturers. So I wanted to talk about really what's in our stable right now during the current active session here in California. We've got a solar panel responsibility and AB 864 that a couple different bills from the previous session, AB 2 and AB 1238, and it essentially encapsulates elements of those bills in a fully baked EPR bill, which just came out last month. And what it does is it establishes an EPR program for rooftop solar. So it's those arrays that you put on top of your house, or maybe even a business. We're still working out some of the details, but it also establishes recycling requirements for projects for land use and type 1. So some of those large arrays, maybe even some of those used by utilities. We've got some massive arrays. They've sunk tons, oftentimes millions of dollars into establishing these arrays, and they, in some cases, already have take-back programs arranged with the producers. So what we decided to do on this bill is to focus almost. It's great, and we're optimistic about this, and we are hoping for the best. The other bill that I wanted to mention today was single-use vaping devices. That's AB 762 from Assembly members Irwin and Wilson. This is a ban bill. I'll be frank and as specific as I can. reusables have been around for years. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing this massive tsunami of single-use vapes coming from Asia, mostly from China. And they're selling like hotcakes because they're extremely inexpensive. Vapes oftentimes use them for a week or two, and then they pitch them. And what we're seeing is this is quickly becoming their object in many communities, and they're very expensive to process. They contain not only either marijuana or tobacco product, nicotine, but they also have a battery and a circuit board and a problematic product. Local communities don't know what to do with these things because they're in many ways entirely glued together. You can't disassemble them. They don't have a legal right to take them apart and to separate the valuable part of products and components from those that have very little value. So we're with this ban, and again, recognizing that reusable products are already in existence. They do sell well. Ultimately, the consumer would benefit from using a reusable product as opposed to a single-use product. So we're pushing forward with a statewide sales prices. Quickly, California Carpet Program AB 80. That's with Assemblymember Aguiar Curry bill, essentially, from last year's AB 863, which is one of NSAP's successful bills from last year. We're just working with Assemblymember Aguiar Curry to clean up all components and wrap it. Let me just move on to the next slide. And then, there we go. Can you see now? Great. Pharmaceutical sharps and cleanups bill. This is 8754 from Assemblymember Connolly. Passed back in 2017, 2018, an extended producer responsibility bill called SB 212 that focused on establishing a statewide network of take-back bins for pharmaceuticals. And it also established a mail-back program for used sharps. So CPSC was a sponsor of this bill. Almost everyone on our team was in some way, shape, or form involved in this, or the regulations that came after the passage of that bill. And taking a step back, now that the program's been in operation for a couple of years, and we're starting to see the annual reports come in, we've got some lessons learned, and some folks from the sharps industry want to pass a bill that includes some modifications to itself and the regulation support it. And we think they want to focus mostly on geographic convenience and also some of the costs associated with distribution of the take-back bins for the sharps at the pharmacies. And there are a couple of other things that we wanted to discuss, but we've got some issues that we want to discuss should this bill be fully presented and start going to committee. So this will be an interesting evolution, I think, is how we're describing this bill 8754 in the coming months. I'm not going to talk a lot about the next three. Heidi's got a presentation and she's deeply involved in two, if not all three of these. So move along to this slide. It just maybe that the California Product Stewardship Council has a number of award-winning campaigns that focus on specific product types. You've probably heard of Don't Rush to Flush or Refuel Your Fun. Those have been wildly successful, and they've really helped take the residents of California from heavily using single-use products and pushing them to reusables. And it helps them understand where we with those products at the product's end of life. So we've branched out and we've extended it to other product types, including textiles and marine flares. And we're also moving forward now with our DR Cubed campaign, which is created during the pandemic. And that focuses on promoting products that are durable, reusable, repairable, and recyclable. So we'll save questions for the end. I just wanted to share my contact information here should you have any questions. And up next is Heidi.
Thanks, Nate. Okay, well done. We got a lot of stuff covered. I'll cover some more, but my chat, I couldn't initially email you or talk to you all in the chat, but it would help if, feel free if you want to put questions in the chat as I go. I'm happy to answer them, so you can stay with me on this because there is a lot going on. So thank you again for being here. We're really excited to talk at the very beginning of the session where we're really just starting to get into it. In fact, bills are being heard. They just got heard yesterday. We got more bills going to Senate Environmental Quality on Wednesday the 2nd. So a lot is starting to happen. And we want to make sure your questions are answered. So please put them in the chat if you have any, and I will keep an eye on that. Okay. So again, the extent I actually started, I'm sure most of you know this, that I started the California Product Stewardship Council with another director, co-director back in 2006 now. And we did that for 12 years. We were super successful, and then had to go out and do national work because people were asking for help. California was leading the nation on EPR legislation. So I'm now at the national level, and we have a 501c4, meaning we can lobby in any state, and pretty much unlimited with the National Stewardship Action Council. And we advocate for a responsible circular economy. So it's mostly EPR, but we do a lot more than that, like toxins, fluorescent lighting bans that we did in California a couple of years ago, things like that. So we want to make sure you have your questions answered on how to engage, because what I learned when I first started doing this, when I came from government, I used to be advisor to the chair of the Waste Management Board in California. I could see that local governments were really not that good at lobbying for themselves, but the businesses were excellent, and you were outgunned. So I figured, uh-oh, somebody's got to go out and help teach them how to advocate for yourself and know what to ask for and how to ask for it. And that's how this whole thing got started. So we're very excited to be here. Oh, this is my PDF, so I guess I'll just scroll it. So who we are, again, I just talked about the C4. The C3 is we started a few years after we started NSAC in 2015, so we could start doing education and outreach, and local governments could join us, because most would not join the C4. But our vision is that the U.S. attains a responsible circular economy. And I can talk about what responsible means, but that does include responsible end markets. We don't want these things going overseas or being put in places they should not be and handled inappropriately. So this is one of my favorite slides. When the bathtub is overflowing, what do? Do you go run for the mop, or do you go run for the spigot? Smart people go for the spigot. And the reason that we do that is because until you stop the flow of water, you're wasting your time mopping. So what have we been doing? We've been historically mad moppers. We have not been turning off the spigot, and more and more and more hazardous materials are coming at us all the time that were not designed for end of life. The manufacturers don't have to pay for it. They do not care, because you have to deal with it and figure it out. So that's why we want to go upstream and turn off the spigot. So nature is circular. When people tell me we can't get to zero waste, I said, actually, we were there. We've interrupted a naturally zero waste system and created waste. Everything on this planet was designed to be what was waste for one system is a feedstock for the next. But we've interrupted that with materials like plastics that nature cannot absorb and break down, or PFAS. And this is the kind of stuff that's really causing such damage to our natural systems, and we have to stop it. And what I bring this up for is because a circular economy is more than just recycling. If you hear people using it like, oh, we're going circular, and they're only talking about recycling, if you talk about circular economy, it's three things. It's designing waste and pollution out of the system, which means turn off the spigot. Then it's keep products and materials in use. Organics go in organics composting, and then the industrial materials go into the recycling stream. And then you go back and fix the natural systems that you broke and damaged. And we've damaged everything, including our own health. We are now full of PFAS. Almost every person on Earth has them in our bodies. They cause cancer. And that's one of literally thousands of chemicals that we are being exposed to. But we also need to decouple economic activity from the consumption of finite resources. And that's what Nate talked about, going from cradle to grave to cradle to cradle. So the policy tools that we can use are broad. There are 6 main ones that we use. Banning the sale of a certain product, truth in labeling to make sure people buy the right thing and they know what they're getting, right to repair things, product stewardship, as Nate talked about, in EPR, which I'm going to get into deeply on hazardous waste, and then deposits are just an option to add to a producer-run or a government-run program in order to get the material back and increase your collection rate. And we ask a bunch of questions before we pick which policy tool we're going to try and pass. Like, is it how toxic is it? Is there a safer alternative? Like in the case of marine flares, there finally is a safer alternative. It's a electronic signal that's powered by a battery, and the electronic and the battery can be recycled. The flare cannot. So, what have other countries done? What can we copy? Why do we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we also don't want to copy mistakes. So we learned a lot by looking around the world and designing the best of what's the best and cherry picked for California. Now, the benefits of EPR, you probably all know this, so I'll just cover it briefly, but the goal is to get the producers to pay the full life cycle cost, extending their responsibility beyond the point of sale to design those products to be durable, reusable, repairable, less or non-toxic. That's what we want. And then that creates safer recycling systems. I'm sure you've all seen, we just went from 7th to 4th most deadly industries in the nation, according to the Bureau of Labor statistics. That is not good. I just saw a video, I don't know if you saw it, about 2 weeks ago. There was a poor guy just putting trash in the back of a truck in Ohio. Turns out somebody threw an oxygen tank in there, and when he pressed the compactor, it just blew up right in his face and started on fire. Very lucky he wasn't seriously injured, but this is the kind of stuff we've got to stop to make sure our people are safe. And then personal responsibility. If you buy it and you know what it is because it's labeled properly, then you should pay its end of life costs, not your neighbor. That's what true producer responsibility is. It's getting away from socialized costs. And this has been going on, like I said, I've been working on this since 2006-07. We got the state to adopt the strategic directive for the first time in 2007, saying that we're going to hold producers responsible for cradle to cradle responsibility by developing relationships with them and closing the loop, because you can't close the loop on the material until you close the loop on the conversation. At that time, nobody, almost 20 years ago, that it wasn't, the producers were not talking to the waste haulers or the local governments that had the responsibility to manage their products. But they are now, because we've passed all of this and we're going to pass more. So we're very proud, and I think Nate showed this as well, but we've done everything from truth in labeling on cannabis vapes, because they were calling them easy disposal, or so it implied it was going in the trash. They now have to label them hazardous and they have to go back. The wipes were labeled as flushable. They can't say that anymore. We changed that. So there's lots of tools in the toolbox that we've used to get informed consumers to buy the right thing and put it in the right place at end of life. California's been very successful. So we thank all of you for your help. And our little organization that started in 2015 also, we punch way above our weight, and we have passed I think we have passed every bill that we started off with, except for a couple of them got modified slightly. And so everything from cleanup bills on the carpet program, which has been a problem from the beginning, the way it was written, a lot of things to fix, and the legislature doesn't seem ready to fix them all at once, to pyrotechnic distress flares, which I know a lot of you on the coast are dealing with, and at Lake Tahoe, which was vetoed last year. We want to get that done this year. The Allen bill that was household hazardous waste evolved to be a Paint Care Expansion Act, but that's the first in the nation. So all three things we did last year were first in the world or the nation, and we're very proud of that. We lead the way in a lot of ways. We also negotiated, I was in the room for SB 54, the big packaging law, which just got some delays from the governor's office. That's a whole nother kerfuffle. Don't have time to talk about. But there is Mercury Lamp Prevention Act that banned mercury containing lighting sales in California by January of this year. If you know of retailers still selling them, please let us know. Take a picture, because we'd like to go back and have a talk with them and make sure DTSC knows about it. So anyway, we've been working on this a long time, including we passed a bill in 2019 about household hazardous waste reuse and exchange, making those regulatory conditions better for you and easier for you to follow. But how did we get started? When I was with the California Product Stewardship Council, we started on pharmaceuticals in 2012. That evolved at the local level in Alameda, that evolved into a a long, painful fight at the state level that took 5 years to pass. Because we had to go local first. So when you're up against the chemical industry or the pharmaceutical industry or the tobacco industry, if they're really well funded and lobbied up, you had better go local first. And that pushes the bar up so that you can then get them to negotiate at the state level. And that's what we did. I went literally county to county, starting with Alameda, passing local ordinances that said, we are going to do EPR for pharmaceuticals ourselves. We see kids dying. We've got to get them out of the household, and we don't want them flushed. And that resulted in all these counties passing those ordinances, and we had LA and Sonoma about ready to go. That was me testifying in the 6th hearing in LA County to get it passed. And then they came to the table and negotiated. So this time with hazardous waste, we went to LA first because they've got a third of the legislators and they have a big hammer when they move. So reimbursement, just so you can see the savings you guys have all had, $64,000 a year was the first time I heard of a local government getting reimbursed for their sharps collection program. And that's what's under attack now. Nate brought that up, so I won't get into that bill. And thank you, Nate, for focusing on that and making sure that program works better than it is now. It needs to, we've still got some kinks to figure out. And we did the first in the world's ordinance on pharmaceuticals, and it led to a Supreme Court challenge. And I'm very proud of this because we laid the rules of the road down. We literally, through the courts, said that if you're a local government trying to protect public health and safety, you have the authority to make producers pay for the end of life of that product. That's what came out of Pharma versus Alameda. And we worked a long time. Nate started on this too, where we were putting out medicine bins and showing how it could work. And then finally they took over. So yay, we finally got all that. But you can see how hard this was. This was very, very difficult. It took us years and years and a lot of tenacity and a lot of support from local governments. But we got it off the Senate floor 39-0 in 2018. The reason, again, is tenacity, sticking to it, and outsmarting and going local. So that's how we did it. We've had a lot of successes with paint. I'm very proud that we were the first permanent program in California. It's expanded to other states, 10 now, but we just expanded and are the only state that have aerosol cans and all the other paint products like furniture paint and arts and crafts paints. Those are all getting added in the new regs package that they start having hearings on. I think did they just have one, or maybe they're having one, but please comment because we want these programs to work for you and it's very important. And Kent, as far as the recording, I believe Victoria is recording this at our end, so we're happy to share at least this part of it, of the webinar. I don't know if Nama is. We've learned a lot of lessons along the way. And one of the things I say is I have, I do this because I want things to work. If they're not working and there's lessons learned, then let's go fix them. And that's why we've done 3 fix-it bills, even though we didn't run the original carpet bill. We couldn't get them to listen on a bunch of stuff in the legislature. But we've got to go back and fix it if we know it's broken. In fact, when I was with CPSC, we actually, and NSAC, I was trialing both at the time, we actually asked the legislature to go back and do an audit of the mattress program because it was not working very well. And we found 14 recommendations came out of that report that we agreed with that we then went back and fixed through a cleanup bill. And it, I think, works a lot better now. So sometimes, it's plan, do, check, adjust over and over again. That's how we'll get the best programs. But one thing that just came up recently is define the covered products to be as expansive as you think it will be. Because originally, for example, with paint, that was early days. That was like the first industry that came to the table and negotiated. And it was just latex and oil-based. But really, we should have covered, or at least had phase in of aerosol paint and all those other paint products we talked about. Now on the new bills, I'm advising everybody just start with a big bunch out of the gate. Because if you try to do a household hazardous waste EPR next to an existing program, as we were doing, and Paint Care said, I don't want to be split between two producer-run organizations, we said, fine, you stay in your lane, but let's, in the future, start with the whole category of products. So we passed, again, as I said, multiple cleanup bills. We've learned a lot of things about you have to set hard recycling rates and dates. You have to prevent, not with hazardous waste, most of it, there's no recycling. You just have to manage it. But you can't let visible fee money be used to sue the state. That was happening with paint and carpet. And we funded the trades because they are the ones that install carpet and needed some funding to help collect it. We've also passed the first eco-modulated fee in the US on the carpet bill. And we're very proud of that, even though it's flawed and we got to go back and, again, lessons learned. We got to start sending the signal to manufacturers. If you don't design things that's less toxic or easier to handle, recycle, then we're going to give you a malice fee, basically, or an eco fee to drive them to think about design again. And this all started with AB 283 with Wesley Chesbrough from Humboldt County. Many of you 20 years ago would remember him, but he was used to be on the waste board and went to the assembly. And he first introduced the HHW EPR framework in 2009. And when I had started the Product Stewardship Council, I told them, you know, let's get the hazardous, dangerous stuff first. We tried and we got clocked because the chemical industry is very, very powerful. And we didn't have any EPR on the books yet, except we just started talking about paint, but that hadn't passed. And so they were like, we don't get it, no, and that died. And then that got put on the back burner. So our number one recommendation, I was chair of the Recycling Commission for 2 years, 2020 to 2022, and the commission unanimously voted on 34 proposals. And the first one we could agree on was that we should have household hazardous waste producer responsibility law passed in California. And I am bound and determined to get this this year. So the commission recommended that we do a framework legislation, meaning we cover all the other products that are currently not covered in a program like paint or thermostats. We already have existing programs, including the residuals and their containers, because the containers are contaminants to other recycling streams. If you have a hazardous product, especially in a plastic container, we all know that those plastics absorb chemicals. They're like little magnets for chemicals, and you cannot use that to make a baby bottle. You've got to separate that. And the problem we have now is there's no truth in labeling requirement, and they put on their Diazinon container, and this is not an exaggeration, triple rinse and throw in your recycling bin. Does anybody want that in their next food packaging? I don't. So that's very important. And we have seen a huge increase in the amount of household hazardous waste that's in blue recycling bins, to the tune at one facility, Cal Waste Recovery in southern Sacramento County, collected 183,000 pounds just off their blue bin sort line in 2023, which cost them 150 grand to manage. And that cost is going up. So that was literally pulled from their letter to support the HHW bill we're running, rerunning again this year. And as I said, we are the fourth most deadliest occupation in the country now. And I don't know if I can show you any of these videos. I don't think I can, but boy, are they something. This one in the bottom, the waste worker, you can see how close to his head, that is a marine flare that went off. He just picked it up and it almost hit him in the head. This is another example, again, of that truck that was blowing up out of the back due to the oxygen tank. We've got to get hazardous waste properly managed. When it's not, our waste workers are in danger, our insurance goes up, and our facilities go down. It's time to do something about household hazardous waste. So this year, or last year, we had SB 1143, and again, we did very, very well. We were already in the second house, ready to go to the floor, but we knew that the industry and the chemical industry was going to go to the governor and ask that it be vetoed, and they'd probably get it. So we decided, let's just limit it to paint expansion this year, and then come back after people have had more time to think about it, more time to look at it. So that's what we're doing this year. And we've only followed one other state, which is Little Vermont, literally took on the chemical industry and passed the first EPR bill for hazardous waste in 2023. But they're already getting pushed back because honestly, they're not big enough. They're only like 2% of the market. We're 12. Nobody is going to stop selling in California. A lot of them will stop selling in Vermont. And that's why we have to get this done this year too, to show that this can be done. And the threats that we're getting, it's like, I can't remember this guy's name. Is that Wiley? What is his name? That crazy cartoon guy, but he says, "Don't you tell me what to do." I love him. The foes of the different bills across the country are like Orion. They argued that they would literally leave California's market and stop selling flares if we pass the EPR bill on marine flares, which we are currently discussing. So that is, the real threat that they make. And some manufacturers have chosen not to sell solar panels in Washington because they didn't like the Washington EPR bill. So again, states have to work together, counties have to work together, and we have to be coordinated just like the opposition is coordinated. Otherwise, we don't win. Now, SB 1143, again, was amended to be the paint care expansion. I've already talked quite a bit about that. We've really got to get this household hazardous waste dealt with. And so we went straight to LA County, as I told you. We were thrilled that the chair of the supervisors in the middle, that is Lindsay Horvath, she introduced a motion that was passed on the 14th of January, and they voted 5-0, all-women board, very proud of that. They explore that they're going to explore the feasibility of regulating household hazardous waste through EPR policies and or sales bans. So their staff are coming back in 120 days, which will be in May, and we will know then what the staff are recommending. But that's a big deal. They're spending $14 million a year on hazardous waste and estimate they're getting 5 to 10% of it. Now, NSAC's Household Hazardous Waste EPR Stakeholder Roundtable, we actually, our members are, if you're a member of ours, you actually get to participate in these roundtables. It's national and it's very informative. If you want to talk to other professionals about what they're seeing, what they think they might want to do about it, what policies they're investigating, it's really good conversation. We have that every month, and we'd love to have you join us. You can just let me know in the chat, or you can email me. Victoria, maybe you could put that in the chat, our email address, if they're interested in learning more. And our priorities were set, last year. We're just going to finish what we started. And that is the Household Hazardous Waste Bill, SB 501. We have to have sign-ons to that letter by next Wednesday. If you haven't received the information on how to sign on, please let us know. Again, put your name in the chat, ask a question, I'll grab it. Also, the Pyrotech Marine Flare Bill, SB 561 by Senator Catherine Blakespear, who also chairs Senate Environmental Quality. That bill is also going to be heard at the April 2nd Senate Environmental Quality meeting, which means we have to get these letters in by next Wednesday. So it's that time of year, we got to move. And electronic vehicle battery, as Nate mentioned briefly, that Senator Allen is carrying this bill for a third year to get the EV batteries managed properly at end of life, paid for by manufacturers in SB 615. That's important because we went to the Elk Grove Hazardous Waste Facility and saw our first standalone battery from a car that's sitting on a shelf for 4 months, and they had no idea what to do with it. At the bottom, I want to thank Sonoma, Zero Waste Sonoma. That's Leslie, their director, Lukash, and she is holding up a picture of a box of marine flares that were left outside their fire department that they're legally not even allowed to handle because they don't have a big magazine, those big metal boxes that they can store them in. She's a co-sponsor of the bill, and we really appreciate it with Courtney. And then I want to show that picture at the top right. It's time for California to help cities manage household hazardous waste. I co-authored an article with Jordan, who's now at the League of Cities. We're very excited for her. But that's a picture of 2 trailers that burned to the ground in Sunnyvale last September. And they don't know exactly what caused it because it's all burned up, but we all strongly suspect it was a lithium-ion battery and something. So you can see the damage this is causing. And again, this year it's SB 501, Senator Allen, and we all need your help very much to get support for this bill if you want it to pass. If you have any questions about the bill or any suggestions on how to make it better, please let us know that too. And then in other states, I want to highlight, there's paint producer responsibility introduced in Missouri. In Minnesota, there's a bill that's extremely expansive on e-waste. It is ending their old e-waste program and starting a new one under producer responsibility. It's much more expansive. It includes lighting, batteries, all electronics. It's very comprehensive, maybe the most comprehensive I've ever seen, but it is moving. So very interesting there. And then Illinois has their own Household Hazardous Waste Stewardship Act. So you can click on these links. I'm happy to send you the deck after the webinar. But our national priorities are number one, household hazardous waste, because until we deal with that, the cost of managing it, the danger, the insurance risks, I predict we're going to be uninsurable industry within 2 years if we don't get this under control on the fires and the safety risks to our staff. So we have got to do something on the policy side, ending this flow of products that people just don't manage correctly. Critical minerals. Of course, this came up, we decided this last May, but it just came up in the Ukraine war situation. The need for critical minerals, I hope, is not a part of war debates. We need to get our own, and we need to recycle and urban mine ours back from the products that we have in this country to ensure we have a supply for the next generation of products. Otherwise, we're relying on foreign countries that are not our friends to get these minerals. They're in most electronics, and even a little in solar panels, etc. So recycling, refunds, and packaging, that is obviously a big issue that we're prioritizing, as well as always truth in labeling, because we were the co-sponsors of SB 343 to make sure that the chasing arrow is removed from products that are not at least 60% recycled in this state. Now, quickly, I'll take questions and Mate too, but upcoming webinars, we've got one coming up that we're working on that you might be interested in. This is on batteries, compressed gas cylinders, marine tanks, and more. And also we're doing this in collaboration with NAMA and with the Solid Waste Association of North America. We've got, this one is how do we turn off the tap, ending the sale of hazardous products, and that's in May. So I just want to thank you all again. I've got, other working groups that you could join if you're interested on single-use toner cartridges. Please follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube. We post a lot and really appreciate your time today. So we'll open it up for questions. Anybody? Are we allowed to open it up, or can somebody raise their hand, or they put any questions in the chat? Okay.
I did see that the recording will be provided through the NAMA website shortly after it's concluded. So great question.
Anything else? Anybody else have any other questions?
If anyone does want to talk, if you just say so in chat, I can allow you access to speak. Just give me a heads up and we can do that.
Hopefully there's some, I would think.
Well, Heidi and I did drop our contact information into the chat. So if anybody has any questions after the webinar, of course, we're more than happy to answer those.
Yep. Okay, everybody's pretty busy. Hopefully this was helpful. It's always hard when it's on a webinar like this. You can't see faces. You don't know if everybody's hearing or understanding.
To the library.
Okay. Oh, we got a message. What is your perspective on having entities operating outside of a stewardship organization? It's a question from Kent. Thank you, Kent. I'll start with that and then turn it to Nate, but I think what you're asking is, are you talking about a producer or an individual company that does not join a pro and does their own take back program? I think that's the question. It'd be better if we could get him like a back and forth on speaker.
I suspect
make
it's
sure we can-
probably like the some of the car companies like Toyota and maybe even Tesla. They have their own existing programs for taking back some of the car batteries. It's wonderful to see them taking ownership of the issue, but I think it's better when there's a jurisdictional wide standard and program.
Kent, can we hear you?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, thank you. Yes, just, I guess I'm just curious on your take from your association's take on having, and I think you just mentioned the, like, in batteries, where you have Redwood Materials is taking, doing their own thing in states that don't have a battery EPR program, and in places that are proposing it, wondering why they can't just continue to operate outside of the stewardship organization.
That's
And
a great question.
I've
Yeah.
heard kind of different responses and different perspectives. Oregon is taking a perspective that it's kind of a free market. And I don't want to speak for Oregon here, but I mean, it just literally looks like, okay, we're kind of okay. There's enough batteries in the hopper here that they can operate outside of the BSO, and it's not that big of a deal. And I don't want to underscore that, but I mean, just your thoughts on that.
Super excellent question. So this is the big deal on the EV battery bill. And Redwood is very concerned, mostly they're working directly with the car companies, and they're working directly with like e-bike companies, some of them. But I can tell you, it's great when it works. But when we went to the household hazardous waste, Nate was there, facility down in Elk Grove, and we saw the first battery that came back from a car that was sitting on the shelf that they had looked for 4 months to try and get somebody to take. They told us they couldn't find anybody. And I said, well, what about Redwood? They're right over the hill. They said, oh, we've called them multiple times. We've left messages. Nobody's gotten back to us. So the first thing I did when I got back to the office was connect them via email, and all of a sudden it was handled. But my worry is that sometimes when there's no oversight, they'll claim it's working, but it really isn't. And we don't want local governments to waste their time and money calling all around trying to find a home for everything put on the free market. They don't have time. So we're fine with it as long as it works. But if it fails to work, then we feel like it. So what we're doing is saying, look, we're going to do EPR over here. If you want to stay out over here, you're going to have to report and tell us what you're doing and put some transparency on it. And if we agree it's working, fine, you stay in your lane. But if it doesn't, you're going to get pulled in. That's another way to deal with it.
Well, we kind of put that language into the Nebraska bill that's in progress right now. Basically saying, okay, you're kind of okay to stay outside the system, but you are going to report, and basically we're holding your feet to the fire on this as well. So we'll see kind of how that goes. That bill has made progress, but it's still got a ways to go yet.
Well, if you ever need help with testimony or anything or have questions, I'd be happy to help you because I'd love to work in Nebraska. I know you guys are really starting to lean into this stuff. So good work on having those discussions.
Yeah, I want to add one thing really quick to answer the question. Again, great question. You have to take a step back and really look at the system of incentives for companies to have take-back programs. The incentive typically only exists where there's a high value product on the other end, right? So they're only going to get involved. They're only going to take their products back in most cases if there's a financial incentive for them to do so. Batteries are made of products, as Heidi explained, that are rare and quite expensive. It's important to have that supply stream, and there's money to be made off of collecting and then recycling and repurposing those products. So what they've shown in the past is they'll only continue doing that in most cases if that there, but as soon as it's not, the program's gone. So setting that expectation of reporting and various requirements and making sure that everyone's on the same page is critical to the overall success. That way, nobody has an unfair advantage. Everyone's on the same level playing field, and the goals that we want government to set are being followed, and we hold them accountable. Great question, Kent. Thanks for asking. Looks like we've got time for one more question. If anybody has one, feel free to drop it in the chat. Seeing those names. Yeah, we have seen an example of banned in a number of jurisdictions. Unfortunately, it's mostly outside of the U.S. The tagline is incredibly powerful. And we, as I mentioned during my portion of the presentation very quickly, that there's an army of single-use vapes coming over into the U.S. from out of the country, mostly from Asia. And it's very difficult to track them and get them out of the system. So it's one leg of a multi-leg approach to shifting folks to the reusables, again, because it saves them money and it uses less resources and everybody comes out the winner. And it also helps us get our arms around of products that shouldn't be on the market because they're already illegal in some cases. And it also helps limit waste.
Well, they do work. The single-use vape bans do work. They're doing it now. And I think the UK that was one of the first that passed. And we do have, the CPC has a bill, that would ban the single-use vapes because they are so wasteful and such a terrible design with no end of life take back. And if you looked at the charts that the Fire Rover puts out, Ryan Fogelman, he shows as vape sales went up, fires went up in the system. So it's almost a 1-to-1. We've got to get them handled. And if we ban the single use, we still have residuals that'll be out there that need to be handled. And we still have all these rechargeables that need end of life. So our bills, we've got 3 bills in California that deal with vapes. One is the single use vape ban. The other is our EPR bill. If the vapes are banned, obviously they're not coming back, which is great. But if they're still selling at the time we get this thing going, they're going to have to pay in at least temporarily. And then the second one is the third one is to make it technically a lot easier for schools to break them down, take the pod out, and actually recycle the bits. So I think California is going to really elevate, and we're going to work together on messaging so that we can tell the whole world vapes are a gigantic problem, and we need help now. And in fact, I didn't put the slide in, but SWANA, I'm on the SWANA advisory board, and we just worked to put out a statement that we're looking for sign-ons for. If anybody's interested in signing on, that says, we've got to do something about these batteries now. We have too many fires. It's gotten too dangerous and our insurance is at risk, and our people. So if you're interested in that, in fact, I don't know if you have that, Victoria, but we can follow up with all of you. There's only 20 of you or so on this call. We can have that all sent out to you with the follow-up from NAMA if you're interested. Yeah, insurance is a big deal. I'm very concerned. I mean, the South Bay Waste Management Authority, when they had the fire in Sunnyvale or in San Mateo County, California, that it was like 8 months. They were out of business, and it took them $8 million to fix the MRF. And on top of it, they had one insurer going into the fire, and they had 7. They had to patch 7 together in order to make their facility insurable. I'm quite convinced after what we've seen with the fires and insurance in California, we're about this close to having our industry have to self-insure. And I don't know if any of you can do that, because I don't know of any jurisdiction that can do that, especially with our death rates going up. So we've got a crisis on our hands. We're heading towards a cliff, and hopefully everybody's coming together to sign on to the SWANA statement. And thank you very much, Victoria, for putting that in the chat. But thank you guys all so much for being here. It's 11:01, so we should probably close it down. Nate, thanks for co-presenting.
Thanks, Heidi. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. And the video will be made available after the webinar, and you'll see an email that contains that link.
And thanks to NAMA for hosting. We appreciate it very much. Have a good rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Nate.